And I think it says a lot about what the Trump administration thinks about this move.
I just want to read that statement, everyone, just so they know who we're talking about. It is from Secretary Rubio. Obviously, there is a real question how President Trump is going to respond to this, because he clearly did not want this to happen. He said it publicly. Rubio said, quote, "Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran. Our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel." I mean, you're completely accurate when you say there is no statement there saying the United States stands behind what Israel has done here.
Yes, and I think, again, I don't know why this was not mentioned, but I can guess that the reason is that the United States did not want this to happen. And I'll tell you another thing, Kate. Ahead of the Israeli strike, the US government notified several of its allies in the region that an Israeli strike is going to happen. And in that notification, it said, we are not going to take part in this operation whatsoever, and President Trump's only goal is peace. I think this tells you a lot, because we saw the public statement by the Trump administration, and I now told you about the private messages that the Trump administration gave. And I don't think we can read it any other way, but see it as quite a statement by the Trump administration that it does not support this Israeli move.
And just say it again, what was it exactly that they had communicated to allies about the strike, beyond saying that they want peace?
Something like, I think, between 30 minutes to an hour before the Israeli jets started launching their missiles, the US government notified several of its allies in the region and around the world and told them that Israel is going to conduct a strike in Iran today, and that the US is not involved in this strike whatsoever, and that the only thing that President Trump wants is peace. Those were the three messages that have been conveyed in private to several US allies earlier today.
It is quite remarkable, between that and your reporting, that senior Iranian military commanders and several Iranian nuclear scientists have been eliminated as part of this strike. Barak Ravid, as always, thank you for the excellent reporting. Please stay with us and come back if you have learned more in this hour. As we're staying on top of this breaking news here at CNN. Israel is conducting strikes on Iran tonight, as confirmed in a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We're getting live reaction out of the White
Guide. Channel 204, Fox News Channel HD. Live TV Channel 204. Press right for mini guide. Press up for program details and options. Press down for recently launched. Press any number key to begin channel entry.
For Israel, the country is bracing for what is expected to be an Iranian response. That window for a response has gotten shorter and shorter during every round that has taken place. It was 12 days between the initial Israeli strike back in April of last year before the Iranians responded. The window was shorter in October, and Israeli officials have told us they believe the response window tonight will be even shorter. Sean?
All right, Trey Yanks in Israel tonight. Stay with us. We'll check back in with you in a little bit. Also, the great one, Mark Levin, will weigh in, and much more. We have a panel coming up. Now, Israeli military officials, they are reporting that Iran had enough fusion material to make 15 nuclear weapons within days. Anyway, joining us now from the Pentagon, our own Jennifer Griffin. Jennifer, what are you hearing there?
Well, Sean, it's very clear that the U.S. military would like to distance itself from these strikes inside Iran. We've heard from U.S. defense officials that the U.S. military was not involved, but we also are learning from Israeli security sources about what went down earlier today. I'm told that there was a cabinet meeting inside Israel, and that the war cabinet believed that they were getting together to talk about a ceasefire in Gaza, a possible hostage deal. And then when they were brought into the room, many of them were asked to sign non-disclosure agreements, and they were told that they were really brought together because they were moving forward with the strikes against Iran's nuclear program. I'm told from well-placed sources that this will go on for days, and that some of those targets include not just the nuclear facilities, as well as the ballistic missile sites, but also individuals, and possibly there are indications, reports from the region that the Iranian general staff was targeted, suggesting that the chief of staff of the Iranian army may have been killed in the strikes, and that other Iranian nuclear scientists were also struck. If you look back to the way that Israel handled Hezbollah in the north with the exploding pagers, it is likely that they wanted to disrupt the ability of Iran's military, their general staff, those responsible for the ballistic missile program, to be able to respond. Israel is bracing itself right now, expecting that there will be some sort of response, but I think if you look at the past, Sean, it's quite clear that taking out that layer of creating chaos amongst those who would call for those ballistic missile strikes is something that Israel has done in the past and would likely have done this time. Again, right now there are reports of some explosions in and around Baghdad. The U.S. Has an embassy there, as well as military personnel based in Iraq. Of course, there are 40,000 American troops across the Middle East. They are at bases and in extremely vulnerable positions. The White House and the Pentagon have given a warning to the Iranians not to strike those bases, but they are prepared, and that is why you heard Secretary Hegseth order that ordered departure of military dependence just yesterday. Sean?
All right, Jennifer Griffin of the Pentagon tonight. Thank you. In case you are just joining us tonight, massive breaking news from the Middle East. Israel now conducting, as we speak, a major airstrike against Iran at the heart of its nuclear program, but also they are going after their long-range missile sites. Be now the world, especially Israel and American bases in the region, they are bracing for a potential Iranian response. There's a lot to get into. We're going to be joined in a minute by the great one. Well, there he is, Mark Levin. Mark, I want to give a little bit of a commentary into a question and then hand you the ball here, because I think this is very imperative to point out. The world needs to look at this from Israel's point of view. You know, October 7th was orchestrated in part by the Quds forces in Iran and by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards forces. Give them a little history here. They are the number one state sponsor of terrorism. Trey Yanks was talking about a 7-front war. You have Lebanon and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad in the north. You have Gaza, you have Hamas, the equivalent of 40,000 Americans murdered on October 7th. They have murder and rape and torture and kidnapping and beheadings. I've seen the videos. Then they're supplying weaponry to the Houthi rebels, then the Iraqi and the Syrian militias, etc. And Iran firing missiles into this country on its own. They have threatened to wipe Israel off the map. If you look at Axios today, and my sources have confirmed this, that they have been building out these 2,000, pound ballistic missiles with warheads, and even building out and developing new ballistic missiles with a 4,000-pound warhead. There are reports, Axios, 2,000 to 3,000, maybe more. That to me represents Plan B. So if you put yourself in Israel's shoes tonight, they are being, all the terror against them, all the threats against them, the head of the snake in all of this, that would be the Iranian regime. They're the ones that have started this. They're the ones fomenting this. They're the ones responsible for all the death, all the destruction. I'll say one last thing. My prediction is Israel will be victorious. As difficult an operation as this will be. I believe Donald Trump, if they dare lift a finger against one American, God help them, he will unleash hell. I will put I put everything I have on that. And the Israelis do deserve our support, and they will have it at the right time, when needed, if necessary. But I will tell you, the world needs to ask itself this question, and I believe I know the answer. I just got back from the Gulf states. I got back from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, and from the UAE. I talked to a lot of people, Mark, They want this regime out. They just don't have the courage to take them on because they fear Iranian hegemony in the region. I'll hand it to you. The Israelis had no choice from my perspective. What's yours?
The Iranians are about to get their asses kicked, and it's been coming since Jimmy Carter. They've slaughtered Americans. They've slaughtered Arabs. They've slaughtered their own people. They think this is Joe Biden's administration, that they would get away with getting nuclear weapons, and then the world would sit there, wouldn't know what to do about it. You talk about ballistic missiles. Israel sees thousands of ballistic missiles. It can't defend against 10,000 ballistic missiles. And it's not going to sit there and take it. This Iranian regime is a terrorist Islamist regime. It's an illegitimate regime. It came to power through the point of a gun, and it expects to stay in power with nuclear weapons. Thank God we have Donald Trump as president of the United States. Thank God Israel has Benjamin Netanyahu as the prime minister. And I will say this, if this Islamic terrorist regime touches one hair on the head of an American citizen, they're going to wish they had. And I want you to understand something, Sean. We have hundreds of thousands of American citizens in Israel. We have our experts telling us about our bases and so forth. We have hundreds of thousands of American citizens in Israel right now. And so this is a big deal. And I would not ever bet against Israel. I would never bet against the United States of America. In the United States of America, I feel comfortable. I don't have inside information, is watching, is poised, it is prepared. And this Iranian regime, which thinks that Israel should just sit there and take it, even though they have mouthpieces in our own country that have given them aid and comfort. I want the Israeli people to know the overwhelming majority of the American people tonight are rooting for you. We hate this regime too. They've tried to kill the president of the United States. Now, this president, I think, has had enough. This attack, I cannot believe, no inside information would have gone on without us at least getting a wink and a nod. I want the Israeli people to know that. I want the American people to know that we stand on the side of a free people, of a democracy. This tiny little country is now fighting a war for their survival. They're fighting a war for the United States because these intercontinental missiles are meant for us. How do I know? Because the enemy has told us. They're fighting a war for Europe. Europe that keeps trying to destroy this little country through the UN and their own laws and so forth. This tiny little country is fighting a war for the free world against this Islamic Nazi regime that's backed by the communist Chinese, that's backed by the North Koreans, that's backed by the fascist Russian dictator Putin. And we should be supporting Israel every step of the way. I know in America we are. And I predict right now, they had zillions of chances with President Trump, Steve Witkoff. They had zillions of chances to survive, this regime to survive. But they chose not to. You want to know why, America? Because they were always building nuclear weapons, despite what some of the propagandists in our country say. They always wanted them to threaten and destroy the state of Israel and to threaten and potentially destroy the United States. What are we supposed to do? What's Israel supposed to do? Wait till they have nuclear weapons to find out? Well, they're not going to. And these ballistic missiles you speak of, these leakers, the Axios, which are just undermining our country, undermining Israel, undermining our president. But these leakers who talk about thousands of ballistic missiles, think about it, America. Let's say a nation in Central America had thousands of ballistic missiles, and they'd already shot some at us. You think we'd take kindly to that? And that same nation was within a hair's breadth of having nuclear weapons and building missiles specifically so they can reach us. Do you think we would put up with that for a second? Well, just because Israel is small, they're not going to do it. It's a nation of warriors. Look at this poor country. They've been in war for almost 2 years. They didn't pick a fight. Their people were slaughtered. Look at this poor country having to deal with Iran. We've dealt with these damnable bastards in Iran for half a century since Jimmy Carter let them in. They've killed our people. They've attacked our embassies.
They backed every terrorist attack against the United States of America. Israel wiped out the Hezbollah chieftains who killed American Marines. They did that. Israel wiped out Sinwar and the others who were pushing terrorism against America and funding what's going on. Think about what this tiny little country is doing and it's up against tonight. Those countries in Europe that are organizing against Israel and want to create a separate Palestinian state, shame on you. You are damnable. You are disgraced. You should be backing Israel. You should be supporting what they're doing. Just because you sold out your country, just because through immigration you destroyed your country, doesn't mean Israel should roll over and play dead. The Jews in Israel, some of them survived the Holocaust. Many of them have family members who experienced it. They're not going to do it again. October 7th was the warning cry. Iran was behind it. Iran slaughtered those Jews. Iran did it. Iran slaughtered Americans. Iran did it. Now, Iran's finally, after half a century, going to get their asses kicked. That's my prediction.
Mark, by the way, this is what Israel is reporting. We can't independently confirm that the Chief of Staff, Commander of the Revolutionary Guard, the Secretary of Supreme Council, and others have been taken out. And one of the major nuclear facilities has taken a direct hit, none of which surprises me. I think the most important thing that you said is, imagine if this was America. Imagine if we had a Hezbollah to the north, where Canada is, or if we had a Hamas to the south, if we had Houthi rebels, if we had other terror groups or neighboring countries all firing missiles into our country. You know, I've been to Israel a number of times, as you know, and I've been in these underground terror tunnels that, you know, that money that should have been spent on hospitals and schools and helping the people in Gaza have better lives, but it wasn't used for that purpose. It was used for terror. I went to the border town, Sderot. You could see with the naked eye Gaza. That one town, when I went there at that time in the previous 10 years, had been hit with 10,000 rockets, and you could see the progression and the size and the lethalness of those rockets as they have evolved over the years, Mark. Kids could not play outdoors in the town of Sderot. They had to play in underground bunker playgrounds because it only took 12 to 13 seconds once a rocket was fired out of Gaza, often using civilians as shields from schools or hospitals. You had 13 seconds to get the kids out of the streets, and they had to play underground in a bunker. That has been their reality. If Americans had to live with that reality, I think they would have a very different perspective. But with all that said, Rasmussen Polagino came out last week, 84% of Americans support Donald Trump ensuring that they don't have nuclear weapons. Looks like Israel has begun that operation tonight. And I do agree with your assessment that the U.S. will be there if needed. I do not believe, for those people that always say, well, this is going to be just like Iraq, it's going to be a long, protracted war. No, the nature of warfare has changed dramatically. I've been saying that the next generation of war will be fought in air-conditioned offices. It's not going to be door-to-door, stepping over IEDs without up-armored Humvees like we went to in Iraq. That's not how it's going to happen. Mark, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Real quick. You know who's rooting for Israel? The Iranian people. The Iranian people have been slaughtered, butchered, and tortured. Nobody ever talks about the Persian people who want their liberty. You know who's rooting for Israel? The cowardice Arab countries, except for Qatar perhaps, that keep their mouths shut and pray to God that the Israelis end this regime. That's the truth. The people in the dungeons and the prisons in Iran, they're rooting for the state of Israel as I speak right now. And we must be and should be too. They take this rash off the body politic and their nuclear weapons with them. The United States, we can live in peace. At least sleep in peace knowing that that Islamic, Nazi, terrorist regime no longer is a nuclear threat. And that is a big change for our military, for our geopolitical positions, and everything else. It's a big defeat for China, for North Korea, big defeat for Russia, maybe some of the other countries too. But this is an evil, evil regime. And the idea that there are some people who argue, let them have the nukes, we can manage it. What do you see on your screen right now, America and Sean, ultimately, believe it or not, is peace. Because when they're done, and hopefully this regime loses its nuclear power, and perhaps its head, based on what the Israelis are doing, this will be viewed as one of the greatest acts of preemption for peace in world history. That's
It's
what
not the first time, Mark. They did it with Iraq, they did it with Syria, and it now became a necessity for them tonight. And frankly, the world has to ask itself, will it be better off? And every,
Two, current channel entry 202. Info banner, CNN HD, channel 202, new, the source with Caitlin Collins, episode 120. Get more info, button 1 of 2. Press OK to select, press right to review. Press back to dismiss, press any number key to begin channel entry.
The scope of this attack by Israel against Iran looks like how the United States is responding tonight and what we are hearing at the White House. We'll be back after a quick break.
Guide, channel 211, channel 200, channel 206, channel 213, Bloomberg TV, channel 200, channel 2, channel 220, channel 200, channel 200, channel 200, channel 200, channel 206, News Nation HD. Live TV channel 206. Press right for mini guide, press up for program details and options, press down for recently launched, press any number key to begin channel entry.
Emphasis on degrading Hamas's political power at this point. It wasn't an ideal time. There was some type of intelligence that led them to this operation, which is of course planned. And yes, the S-300s were shown as not capable, 50% probably destroyed back last October, limited number of S-400s. Israel has the capability, it appears, to systematically...
Guide, channel 205, MSNBC HD. Live TV channel 205. Press right for mini guide, press up for program details and options, press down for recently launched, press any number key to begin channel entry.
We want to secure our border.
MSNBC has California governor
We
on.
need a pathway to citizenship for people being here
Gavin
15,
Newsom.
20 years, contributing, paying their taxes, being remarkable members of our community. But that's not what this is about. I was in Oxnard, California, and Ventura County yesterday, met with three people directly impacted by indiscriminate raids. I met a 12-year-old boy in 6th grade, weeping, crying, tears pouring down his face. His mother and father were both detained. They disappeared. He has no brothers, no sisters, no family. He quite literally is on his own, abandoned. That's Donald Trump's America. 20 plus years his mom and dad working in the same fields, doing the same packing and shipping. 20 plus years. They've disappeared. 12-year-old boy. You saw the images of ICE officers running through strawberry fields, CBP, helicopters above. I met a woman, a single mother, who was walking out at 5:45 a.m. to get in her car. 7 agents surrounded her. They took her in a car, in essence kidnapping her, driving her around for almost 2 hours until she finally convinced the agent, because she has 3 young children, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old, that they needed to get to school, and there's no one to help them get to school. She was finally allowed to call her oldest daughter, who was interrogated by the agent and threatened. And they threatened her after they dropped her off, said, "We may be back." Terrorizing this woman, single mother. no criminal record, no criminal background. I met another young woman whose husband has quite literally disappeared. No criminal record. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't even know what happened. That was just yesterday. That's Donald Trump's America. Agricultural workers. Think about that when you have dinner tonight. Think about when you enjoy your first course. Have some fresh fruit, some fresh vegetables. Who provided those? Who supported you? None. Think about it when you go home and the construction around your property. Maybe you're getting a remodel. Who's doing that work? Destroying not only the foundations of our democracy, the best again of the Roman Republic and Greek democracy, but now our economy is at risk because of the recklessness and the cruelty of Donald Trump, the indiscriminate cruelty of Donald Trump. Why else do you go to a 7-Eleven? Why else do you go to a nail salon? Why else do you just randomly show up in front of a hardware store? Why else? It's not about criminals. That's about creating chaos. And I do not believe the American people, the majority of the American people, support that. Quite the contrary. And so this decision was important because it's about constraints, it's about limits, it's about our democracy. And that's why we're very grateful by the order.
Thank you.
Well, I think the courts will. I think that's, look, I'm counting on these separations of power. It's the co-equal branches of government. Co-equal, Mr. President, branches of government. He's eliminated one, or they eliminated themselves. That's called Congress. Speaker Johnson, who his eloquence was elevated when he called to, quote unquote, tar and feather the governor of California. That's the speaker. Very religious man. I guess that's the spirit. Right? The word, the Lord. He's abdicated any oversight and responsibility over the President of the United States. There's one branch remaining, and that's the judicial branch. So my response to you is we count on the judicial branch. But there's also, as I said, I ended that speech 48 hours ago. I said there's the most important office, and that's office of citizen. That's all of you. Stepping up, stepping in, and sharing your passion with action. Pushing back against this peacefully, and sharing your voice. And I think this weekend, there will be millions and millions of Americans rightfully expressing their outrage, their constitutionally protected right to assemble and free speech, peacefully expressing that all across this country. I pray that's the case. No, not at this moment. This is what he does. He creates a problem, and then he tries to be a hero in his own Marvel movie. Get on to it. Fill in a blank.
His own,
On almost every topic.
his own Marvel movie.
And then tries to do a make-believe as if you're all perfect little sheep. And you're gonna go on with it to be the hero in his own Marvel movie. He initiated those raids.
He started.
He significantly increased the scale and scope of those raids. That's why he wants the National Guard. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of guards, men and women, now being dispersed everywhere, sprinter vans, unmarked, people with masks, running in, rolling over, some case running into cars, 6-month-old kid, a 3-year-old child in the back of the car, left. So, spare me, Mr. President, that he's sincere on it, but if he is, that happened because of you. It happened because of the American people, because they stood up, and that should give us some optimism. Thank you all very, very much.
That was California Governor Gavin Newsom responding to a federal court in California just moments ago ordering President Trump to return control.
2. Current channel entry 202. Info banner, CNN HD, channel 202, new. The source with Caitlin Collins, episode 120. Get more info, button 1 of 2. Press OK to select, press right to review. Press back to dismiss, press any number key to begin channel entry.
Strikes based on what we've seen so far, especially in terms of targeting Iran's top military leaders as well as senior nuclear scientists kind of in mass based on what we have heard. Do you know how many of those top military leaders and nuclear scientists in Iran, the strikes against them were successful? How many of them have been eliminated tonight?
No, I don't go into those details, but I can tell you one thing. It's those people who were involved in the nuclear production, those who were putting together the ballistic missiles, they are targets. They are part of the machine that threatened Israel and other countries in the world. You know, if you look back at the attack that Israel took, whether it was against Iraq or Syria, to try to develop the nuclear reactors, I think today everybody can thank Israel for those actions. So maybe today, some people are not sure about why we are doing it today, but down the road, a few years from today, the world will thank Israel for the actions we took today.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing from U.S. senators who say they don't support these attacks. Did Israel coordinate with the Trump administration before launching these attacks?
We have an ongoing dialogue with the United States, but this decision was a decision of the Israeli leadership. You know, we are independent, we take our own decisions, and for us, you know, it is not involve the U.S. attack. We saw the statement of Secretary Rubio. It was a decision of the Israeli government, and it was taken by our forces.
If Iran responds and launches a counterattack, does Israel expect the United States to assist them in that response?
Well, first we called the population, we woke up the entire people of Israel, about 10 million people in the middle of the night, because we expect the public will be retaliation. We know it will not be easy today for the people of Israel, but we are determined, you know, especially after October 7th, to take preemptive action, and not to
Do
wait.
you expect the U.S. to help Israel in response?
Well, we have our capabilities. You know, we hear threats that from Iran to attack the allies of the U.S., not only Israel, but other allies. You know, that's the decision of the United States. But we have our capabilities, and we knew exactly what we were doing before we started this attack.
But this is going to be a crucial question, obviously, in terms of what Israel is able to do and whether or not Israel could be overwhelmed, depending on what an Iranian response would look like. And so I want to ask the question again, whether or not Israel will be expecting the United States to assist if Iran does respond to these attacks that Israel has launched tonight.
So I don't think we should go into speculation. As I told you earlier, we have our capabilities. We developed a lot of technology, some of it together with the US, some of it with other countries. But I think today, you know, it's not only about Israel. You hear threats against the allies of the United States, and we are focused now on continuing to eliminate the threat, and we will do whatever it takes to make sure that Iran will not have ballistic missiles, they will not have nuclear capability. We know it will be long, we know it will not be easy for the people of Israel, but this is a historic day for our nation.
Ambassador Danny Danon, thank you for joining us on the breaking news tonight.
Thank you.
And we are going to continue to follow this breaking news as we're learning more about the scale and what this attack looks like, and also real questions about what it means as far as what that response is going to look like. You heard the ambassador not saying there whether or not they will be counting on the United States to help Israel in that response, and still waiting to see the president himself weigh in on all of this. We're staying on top of the breaking news. Stay with us.
Ned's excited for his big date.
Guide, current time. Channel 204, Fox News Channel HB. Live TV Channel 204. Press right for mini guide, press up for program details and options, press down for recently launched, press any number key to begin channel entry.
Systems that are aimed or were aimed right at that moment at Tel Aviv and beyond. And in Tehran, the IRGC command that you just reported, right inside the capital, Israel's going to always go after that leadership and start trimming those nails and getting heads off those snakes. So, this was a kill chain. That's what we'd call this. A kill chain through and through, preemptive, and it's not over. And the IDF obviously confirming that this is probably going to go on for a few more days, but Israel's doing what it has to do, trying to delay threats that are trying to eliminate us. And that's what you just saw play out here.
Brian Mast, also with the program, Mark Meadows is also with us. Brian, we're going to get your take on what is unfolding tonight. I don't think Israel had an option. How many more tens of thousands of missiles are you going to allow the Iranians, either directly or through their proxies, to fire into that country?
Yeah, I think you asked the right question, but the way that we need to be asking that is this. Everybody asking, what's the response going to be by Iran? Well, you know what it's not going to be? It's not going to be a nuclear weapon. It's not going to be uranium. It's not going to be measured in kilotons and megatons. And there's a response. It's going to be high explosives measured in a couple thousand pounds. That's the big difference. That's why we need to be thanking Israel right now, because by doing this, they're saying we need to change the ballgame. We can't let Iran get to the place that they start operating the way that Russia and Putin operate, saying anytime that they want to, we're going to respond with a nuclear weapon. If we see this as a threat of war, we need a nuclear active war. We can't let Iran get to that point. And thank you, Israel, for making sure that they're not going to have a nuclear response.
The commander of Mark Meadows of the Revolutionary Guards has been killed in this strike, once again showing superior intelligence of the Israelis, just like the pager incident is beyond superior. They have had to brace themselves for this inevitable moment, and getting close to weapons-grade enrichment is a risk they could not take from a country that has been firing tens of thousands of rockets at them.
Well, it's a risk that they couldn't take, but it's a risk that we couldn't take either, Sean. One of the interesting things, there's going to be all kinds of armchair quarterbacks out there saying, well, you should have negotiated longer. Let me just tell you, as someone who has followed this particular issue for well over a decade, I can tell you that the Iranians are not honorable negotiators. And the only thing worse than a dishonorable negotiator is one with a nuclear weapon. And so they had every right to do it. They should do it. Obviously, in the Situation Room, Peter Doocy's there reporting from the White House. There are certainly a number of the president's team in the Situation Room right now looking at what is happening in real time. I can tell you, he's got the best team there around him. But the patience that President Trump has shown in dealing with Iran really has brought us to this time, because we couldn't have waited any longer. We are weeks away from a nuclear Iran, which means that it would wreak havoc not only for Israel, but for America as well.
And the Supreme Leader, Aaron, was getting very, very arrogant in his comments by rejecting the president's offer. We've got 20 seconds. We'll let you comment on that.
Bihoshtar mizanet, dagi govi bigiran, which means we'll hit you without warning, precise, strong, ruthless. Sean, Israel doesn't have any choice. The longer they wait, the closer it's about survival for Israel, so we struck first. And let that be a lesson to all the leaders of the IRGC. Israel's got assets everywhere we're watching, and you did this to your country. Flip them all for us, so thank you.
All right, Aaron, thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have left this evening. Our prayers are with the people of Israel. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. Can't. Stay with the Fox News channel all night, continuing breaking news, live coverage, the Israeli strikes against Iran. Trace Gallagher will take it here. Let not your heart be troubled, and please set your DVR so you never, ever, ever miss an episode of Hannity. Godspeed, Israel. Trace takes over from here. Thanks for being with us.
And good evening, I'm Trace Gallagher. It's 10 p.m. on the East.
Info banner, CNN HD, channel 202, new, CNN Newsnight with Abby Phillip, episode 121. Get more info, button 1 of 2. Press OK to select, press right to review. Press back to dismiss, press any number key to begin channel entry.
Nuclear facilities and military sites, and call the strikes preemptive for Israel's self-defense. Right now, you're looking at live pictures over Jerusalem as Israel braces for imminent retaliation from Tehran, potentially a missile or a drone attack. But notably, the United States is distancing itself from Israel's actions tonight, calling them unilateral and warning Iran to avoid targeting any American assets in the region. We have reporters in the region and in Washington following this breaking news story. A group of analysts joining me at the table tonight. Let's start here. Let's start with Oren Lieberman, who is in the field for us. Oren, tell us what you know tonight.
Abby, two big pieces of information have just come into CNN here, and we'll start with those. First, multiple Iranian state-run media outlets are reporting that General Hossein Salami, the commander-in-chief of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, has been killed as part of this Israeli attack. That is a tremendous development, as Israel has made clear. It's going after not only Iranian nuclear facilities and ballistic missile sites, but also the top levels of Iran's military structure and of their nuclear structure. And this is seen by what Iranian state media is reporting now. Again, the head of their elite IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, General Hossein Salami, has been killed as part of the attack. The question, have others been killed as well? Again, that in and of itself would be a significant development, but that is just the beginning of it. An Israeli military official confirmed that a second wave of strikes is also underway and has been over the course of the past several minutes, as Israel targets what it says is the goal here, trying to cripple Iran's nuclear facilities and its ability to produce ballistic missiles. Israel has said that Iran has thousands of ballistic missiles with the capability of producing many more, and that its nuclear enrichment had given it a significant amount of highly enriched uranium capable of producing within a matter of days or weeks several atomic weapons. That's why Israel believed that it had to carry this out effectively unilaterally, the U.S. making clear that they were not a part of the operation, which again is a noteworthy development, especially as this comes right before the U.S. and Iran are scheduled for a sixth round of nuclear talks in Oman. It would seem to be impossible for those to continue now, given the Israeli action here. Meanwhile, in Israel here, hospitals are preparing, and the Home Front Command is preparing for what could be a large Iranian retaliation. We have seen Iran carry out waves of attacks or barrages against Israel last April, last October, including more than 100 ballistic missiles, more than 100 drones, and Israel has intercepted some part of that. Some of that has gotten through. This, Israeli military officials say, could be far larger in terms of Iranian retaliation, capable of overwhelming Israel's missile defense. That's what we're waiting for now to try to find out how imminent this is, if we expect it in hours or in days. Crucially, this story is not over yet. Israel and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have made clear that there will be more strikes coming until they have completed the goal of this operation, which is to destroy or cripple Iran's nuclear capabilities. That, because of the difficulties involved here, because of the distances involved, could take days or even longer than that because of the difficulty for Israel to carry out strikes in Iran so far away. But that is clearly the stated goal of Israel here, which means we now wait to see the scale of the retaliation as Israel's Home Front Command has shut down the airspace with the Transportation Authority and made clear that Israeli citizens have to be ready to head to shelters.
And Oren, this part is very crucial because in the past, as you noted, when Iran launched a retaliatory attack against Israel, the United States played a key role in being involved in protecting Israel in that moment. Given the statement from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who's also the National Security Advisor, do you have a sense that the United States in this moment would be willing to do the same?
So there's a key difference between defending Israel and carrying out offensive strikes with Israel. The U.S. has made clear that the strikes were unilateral, the offensive side of that. It's hard to imagine a scenario in which the U.S. wouldn't help defend Israel. But I'll build on that quickly here. It wasn't just the U.S. taking part in the defense of Israel with missile defense capabilities, with radar warnings. It was a number of other countries. For example, Jordan. The U.S. also had destroyers off of Israel's coast to help intercept missiles. And that was a key effort from the commander of U.S. Central Command, General Eric Kurilla, to put together that coalition of countries willing to help detect and intercept these missiles. Because this was unilateral, it's unclear if those other countries are willing to play the same role. And what that means is the attempt to defend Israel from what is expected to be a large barrage of not only ballistic missiles, but potentially drones becomes exponentially harder. The numbers will likely already be capable of overwhelming some of Israel's missile defense. If other countries decide not to take as active a role in the defense of Israel and the ability to detect that incoming attack, it makes it even harder still. And that's why you see the Home Front Command, you've already got some of their alerts on our phones, hospitals getting ready, essentially getting ready for a worst case scenario. But look at where we are right now. There is open war, frankly, between Israel and Iran, and that may be the trajectory here of what we see over the next hours and days.
Open war between Israel and Iran. Oren Lieberman, stay close. We will be with you as this story progresses this hour. CNN's Kristen Holmes is in Washington with more from the White House's response to these strikes. Kristen, President Trump tonight had a congressional picnic on the South Lawn. According to reporters, he left around 8 o'clock. What do we know about what he is doing at this moment and what the White House is saying?
Yeah, and I mean, we had been briefed, the White House officials were expecting this to happen. They thought this was a likely possibility and they were bracing for these potential strikes. Now, we are told that Donald Trump conducted a cabinet level meeting at the White House tonight as this was going on. But I do want to talk about that Marco Rubio statement because that is the only statement we've seen from the entire administration. Often Donald Trump likes to say something himself, the White House puts something out there themselves. They are all pointing to this Marco Rubio statement, and there's a reason for that. So I do want to read it to you. It says, tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in any strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. So a couple things I want to point out here. One, we know that they were already concerned about U.S. personnel. They had started removing the non-essential personnel from
military operations.
On top of that, showing that they got heads up. But one thing is unclear is who informed the U.S. and when. Did Donald Trump get on the phone with Netanyahu? The last known phone call that we know between the two leaders was on Monday. Donald Trump has both privately and publicly said that Israel should not strike Iran. So was there any pushback from Donald Trump after the U.S. learned that Israel felt like it needed to do this, according, of course, to their statement? And someone in the administration pointed to a statement that Donald Trump put out on Truth Social as he was likely learning of business. His team was expecting this to happen, saying, we remain committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. My entire administration has been directed to negotiate with Iran. Up until this evening, we were still hearing from administration officials that Steve Witkoff was planning to be in Oman on Sunday for that 6 rounds of talks with Iran. As Oren said, it seems unlikely that this won't be completely derailed, but that was in part why Donald Trump was urging Israel not to strike Iran, saying it would mess up any deal that they had. And to be clear, we're not really sure where these talks actually stood. We reported weeks ago that Witkoff had provided a proposal to Iran that said that they could actually enrich some uranium, but just a few days later, Trump said that there was no deal that could exist in which they had access to nuclear weapons, where they could develop anything nuclear or enrich any uranium. So what that did to that proposal still remains unclear. But again, as Oren has reported, it seems very unlikely that these talks are still going to happen on Sunday.
All right, Kristen Holmes, we will also be back with you as the story progresses. Thank you for that reporting. I'm going to turn to the table now. CNN's Jeremy Diamond is here with us in the studio from Jerusalem. We also have a panel of experts in diplomacy and military affairs as well. But Jeremy, what Kristen was talking about is at the heart of the matter. How close is Iran to a nuclear deal? Clearly, the Israelis believed, according to our sources, 15 nuclear bombs within a matter of days. Did they believe that Trump was being misdirected by this idea of nuclear talks with Iran?
Well, it was clear that the Israeli Prime Minister lost patience with this game of diplomacy that President Trump was trying to play very, very quickly. Obviously, from the outset, we saw him initially try and kind of shape what a nuclear deal with Iran might look like, right? He talked about the Libya model. We talked about total dismantlement of the nuclear facilities. And then, of course, we saw a lot of back and forth over what that would actually be from Steve Witkoff and then from President Trump himself. But ultimately, it became quite clear as Ron Dermer repeatedly, Netanyahu's closest advisor, Ron Dermer, repeatedly traveling to Washington, trying to influence these negotiations, and then clearly trying to make the case to the United States that diplomacy was not going to work with Iran and that strikes were what was necessary. And I've been speaking with Israeli sources over the course of the last hour, all of them emphasizing to me that Israel felt it had a window of opportunity, that it felt like time was slipping away to carry out these attacks. One thing to keep in mind, the last attack that Israel carried out on Iran in October was destroying Iran's air defense capabilities around these nuclear sites. And so it was only a matter of time before Iran would be able to get those back in place, and that was one of the key factors I'm told tonight about carrying out the strike now.
The U.S. that it may not be able to get the deal that it wants, but I heard from both Israeli officials and U.S. officials that Israel didn't necessarily trust the administration on these negotiations. In other words, they were concerned that the U.S., President Trump, might make a deal that went too far for Israel or didn't go far enough in terms of limiting Iran's nuclear program, and therefore that it might act without U.S. approval to take out Iran's
And
nuclear
that
facility.
distrust, by the way, is not limited to Israel. It is shared, including by some of Trump's own allies domestically. And this was playing out very publicly over the last several weeks. That's part of the remarkable nature of this story was the infighting internally in the administration about which direction they should take has been playing out. Israel has stopped the conversation by taking these strikes.
Think back to April, when Prime Minister Netanyahu came to Washington and basically got this message from President Trump, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. Okay, then he made a deal with the Houthis, that no protections for Israel. Then he made a deal that he was negotiating with Hamas without talking to Israel for the release of an American citizen. President Trump is America first, and he's doing what he thinks is an America first policy. And Israel is doing an Israel first policy. And I don't think it's only about the nuclear. I think that this is a new paradigm. This totally changes the equation. I think Israel is going after the Iranian regime. They're looking at what they did with Hezbollah. They're looking after what they did with Hamas. Iran has never been so weak, and they're using what they did there as a template. And as Jeremy said, they're trying to wipe out any attempt by Iran to rebuild its defenses. They're going after its command and control. They're going after, we just saw reports that the IRGC commander was killed. America's doing what it's got to do, and Israel's doing what it's got to do.
The thing is, what Israel's doing is against Trump's explicit goal for the Middle East. Going back prior to this election and since the election, he does not want a war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And he has a war in the Middle East.
Yeah, now.
It's happening before our eyes.
Alex, I mean, talk to us about the decapitation of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. What is the significance of that?
Sure, I think it's definitely significant in a literal sense. This is not a symbolic strike. So the IRGC is a separate body from the Iranian military. It's about 10% of the total force reports directly to the supreme leader, and it was the aerospace commander that was also killed as well. So I think Israel tonight, if we look at the target set, would be the logical one to go after. The senior military leadership and the chain of command is responsible for retaliatory strike capabilities. You go after the ballistic missile systems that are capable of striking at Israel when they launched 200 previously, along with drones that, quite frankly, they had a hard time shooting down. We just heard there's thousands of them, so the next time this can be incredibly tough. And then you obviously go after the integrated air defense systems on the ground as well as the fighter jets, so you can then gain air superiority and air dominance. At that point, you control the skies, and everything else are fixed targets that are left. The nuclear facilities are complex in order to hit. We haven't sold the Israelis bunker-busting bombs in 20 years that they've after them. The Iranians will tell you it's a piece of program. At the same time, they build underground complexes with missiles, with tunnels with 90-degree turns, because cruise missiles can't do a 90-degree turn at Mach 1.2. So the options are limited for them afterwards. Do they collapse the tunnels and the air shafts and then attempt to continue to hit those targets? Is it heroic means, as was leaked in the New York Times, as their ground rate? I don't see this ending right now at all. And I think it depends on what happens next. I think the Iranians are assessing what capabilities they have left to strike, what the leadership looks like, and then they'll determine what they hit next.
And this is also the critical question is, can Israel accomplish what it has now set out to do?
That was exactly the
right?
question to go through. I mean, if they don't have those bombs, can they really take out this nuclear program?
That's right. One of my sources tonight told me that the goal is to continue to attack Iran until it feels like this nuclear threat has been eliminated. And so that's a lofty goal. I mean,
They just said tonight, this is the first stage Are they going all the way? Are they gonna go after the supreme leader?
What is all the way? I mean, what is all the way?
All the way is going after the supreme leader. I think everyone thinks that if you kill the supreme leader, it's like regime change, ding dong, the wicked witch is dead, and all Iranians rejoice.
That's the idea that there are different ways to dismantle Iran's nuclear program, right? You can dismantle it by destroying facilities, destroying the bombs that could carry them. You could also dismantle it by taking out
But you
the
just
Iranian
had
regime
President
entirely.
Trump in the region last week, or a couple of weeks ago, telling the Arab states, we don't need to be nation builders. We don't need to be regime changers. As Jim said, this is exactly what President Trump doesn't want. And, you know, the statements tonight were very measured. I'm wondering what the U.S., I mean, I know the Rubios and the Waltzes of the world are celebrating. How does President Trump feel about it?
It's interesting, I mean, when we reported 3 weeks ago that the U.S. assessed Israel was preparing to strike Iran, I spoke to lawmakers who had been briefed, who said that there was concern that Israel might not just go for nuclear facilities, but might go for regime change. In other words, up the ante, go for a far more ambitious goal. And to Alex's point about the range of targets, that this very much looks like a regime decapitation operation. Leadership, nuclear sites, military installations, nuclear scientists.
Alex, people are probably wondering at home, Israel is in the midst of a war with Hamas in Gaza that has spanned 18 months.
Sure.
This is a significant military operation that has wide-ranging consequences. Talk to us about the capacity that they have to deal with these multiple fronts at once, and is there going to be a point at which they are going to need to come calling to President Trump and say, we need more?
Excellent question. So I think, first of all, we're seeing the ghost of Sinwar come back once again. This is the result of the dominoes from 10/7. The reason you haven't seen a unilateral strike previously is because Israel had feared, I think, the ballistic missile threat from Hezbollah, which was subsequently dismantled. The Patriot attack took out the vast majority of their fighters that are there. They're not completely gone, but they were severely decimated. Hamas is largely a ground campaign. There's air support that's in there, but now we're talking long-range strikes into Iran, so it's a different military capability that's there. In terms of the U.S. being involved, right, I think that was the point that was made previously. The U.S. is not involved now, and now Iran has got a decision to make, to your point as well, when regime change calculus comes into it. Do you take Wasaka, wherever you have left, and determine you're going to counterstrike against Israel only, or do you hit U.S. targets in the region knowing that they didn't participate, and then bring in a second party with greater military capability to then hit you a second time around? And once they expend those capabilities, if the U.S. hits more military hardware, there's a balance of power tipping point in which the Iranian regime no longer has the ability to defend itself, and then it's at risk for regime change. And quite frankly, that's a decision they're going to have to make, and that's why I think we haven't seen a retaliatory strike yet. They're taking stock of what's left and trying to figure out what to do.
And there's not the Iranians are terrorists. They're, you know, they've done a lot of havoc in the region, but they're rational and they're strategic. And so, as Alex just said, they're going to think about it. They're going to be careful. They're going to take, as the U.S. always says, we're going to respond at our time and at our choosing. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to, you know, talk to the U.S. and say, we'll continue to negotiate. You told the Israelis not to do this. I mean, we don't know how they're going to react right now. The Iranian supreme leader is right now.
Jim, I really am wondering, if it is true that Iran is days away from having over a dozen nuclear bombs, how is that a scenario in which the Trump administration, the president, just days ago, says, we're sitting down with them, we're talking to them? Square that circle for me.
For one, I'm not certain the U.S. shares the assessment that Iran is days away from multiple nuclear weapons. It is true. I think you often hear the phrase weeks or months. It is certainly true that the breakout period, the period between where they are right now and having that fissile material to create a nuclear weapon, has shortened significantly. I think weeks is probably a reasonable guess.
Right?
Not today, but we do know that post JCPOA, a deal that was designed to extend that breakout period, that period has shrunk, in part because Israel, in all the years since Trump pulled the U.S. out of that deal, has been building up tons and tons of fissile material. So they're much closer today than they were under that deal. I haven't heard a U.S. official describe it in those terms, days away from multiple nuclear weapons. Regardless, they're closer. And Trump's intention was to try to lengthen that period or even eliminate it via negotiation. But that path appears to be dead. Now, Israel will attempt to take that away with the resources it has, which are not U.S. resources. It's not clear that they're not going to lengthen it to infinite, right? You know, they may lengthen it, it's just not clear how far they would.
And also, as much as Israel has clearly decided to do this on their own, you know, without full U.S. support, I think it's clear that President Trump's position on this has changed over the last few weeks, right? When you listen to what he said at the very beginning of these negotiations, he made very clear no to Prime Minister Netanyahu. He gave him a very clear no. Do not strike Iranian nuclear facilities. I'm engaged in this diplomacy that I hope will be successful. Last week or so, it's been a very different tune, right? Where he has made clear that, you know, this may not be working out, the Iranians are demanding too much, and you know what, one way or another, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
We're gonna take a quick break. I'm looking at the pictures of Jerusalem right now. Daylight is upon us here. But we also just learned that this is phase 2 of the strike.
Correct.
So explain to us what phase 1 would have been and what phase 2, now that there is light, what that looks like.
No, I think it's a great point. Both of you hit out, I think, the key parts of the argument. I'll answer the question. Hopefully we can get back to the others afterwards. Targets of opportunity. If you're gonna want to do this, you take out the command and control first, and people are mobile, they change places, everything else. Your underground facility is not going anywhere. If you have intelligence, you know where they are, you take that out. You take out the air defense systems, you take out the fighter jets, everything else to give you control and prevent or try to limit Iran's ability to retaliate against you. And then you go after more fixed sites afterwards when it's safer for Israeli fighter jets and others to be over the skies if they're going to continue to attack in that manner. So I think that's what phase 2 looks like. There's a number of targets, and the reason this becomes difficult, I know we're going to break, so give me a way about jumping to stop here, is once they mentioned 12 more different physical deals, so everybody listening at home. That's like yellow powder, and that's where you heard the term yellow cake that Saddam was looking for. It looks like yellow cake batter mix that you get at the grocery store. You then heat that into a gaseous state. If you put that into a centrifuge, which essentially, if it's been to the beach or the pool or somewhere, you take a bucket of water and you spin it in a circle, the water sucks to the outside, the air in the center forms like a vortex, right? It's because the water's heavier than air. So uranium is found in like 98.25% U-238 and 1.75% U-235, somewhere in there. So if you calibrate the centrifuges just right, the U-238 gets stuck to the outside, U-235 in the center, you cascade from one to the next, and you increasingly purify the uranium that's there. The same tech, a little more complex, is used to basically take it from research purposes to weapons grade. Once they get past that point, and they were days away from that, then you disperse the material over Iran for weapon systems, everything else, and try to build one. Now you've got a much more complex military problem set. And this morning's report from the IAEA, as well as a bunch of intelligence leaks that came out, the clandestine activity, the Israelis said, that's it, we're going to take it out.
All right, everybody stand by for us. Again, there's breaking news tonight. Israel has struck Iranian nuclear sites and is now bracing for imminent retaliation tonight. We'll go live to see a reporter who just returned from Iran. Stay with us.
I am visiting my town, the town of Moria. Que es mi favorito plato de España.
Guide, current time 10:20. Channel 204, Fox News Channel HB. Live TV Channel 204. Press right for mini guide. Press up for program details and options. Press down for recently launched. Press any number key to begin channel entry.
So I think the people of Iran, the people in Iran are indeed tired of this regime. They want change. They don't want just a strike here, a strike there. They want this regime finished, and so do the people in Israel, because you're right, they're tired. And just because Iran might have certain capabilities weakened by previous strikes and these strikes, let's not forget about all the proxies. Let's not forget that they can just tell Hezbollah, who we know has a significant military capability, go ahead and you guys strike. But I think that Israel and the statement that the IDF just gave that you played says, we're ready both on the defense and on the offense. And I think what they mean by that is we are prepared for all proxy attacks as well.
If we have Katie Pavlich, can we bring Katie up? Because I have a question for her. It's interesting to me, Katie, when you hear about Peter Doocy talking about this, and you hear that the White House is trying to distance itself from this, to whatever extent it can. But there's also this idea that, it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before the White House, before the administration really has to get more involved with this. If Iran starts going after U.S. military bases, U.S. personnel, if it goes after U.S. assets in the Middle East, and if this thing goes on for more than a few days, then it would be
it would be kind of incumbent on the administration and this country to get involved. Am I right?
Well, I didn't read the statement from Secretary of State Marco Rubio as necessarily a distancing, as more of a clarification that the United States was not involved, because as you'll recall, there's been talk up to this point that the Israelis could not take out Iran's nuclear program without some kind of U.S. military support. The other half of that statement was a warning to the regime that if they do retaliate against the United States, against U.S. military bases in the region, as they have threatened to do over and over again, including this morning and just yesterday, as talks are ongoing or were ongoing before tonight. That's a warning from the President of the United States that we are watching very closely. This is Israel's fight at the moment, and you do not want the United States of America to get involved. It was clear that this was coming in some capacity from the Israelis. You had the president at Camp David on Sunday. That was an indication. And quite frankly, the president has said over and over again, we are willing to negotiate. I will give the Iranians an option. This can either end in a diplomatic solution peacefully or it can end poorly. And just given the scale of the damage that the Israeli Air Force has been able to do just in the course of 2 hours, the Iranians have lost a lot, both in infrastructure and in military leadership. And you're also seeing some reporting coming out about the covert operations that are also going on in Iran tonight. So this is a very serious situation, of course, not just for the Israelis, but also for U.S. forces on the ground close to Iran in the region. But given the harsh nature of Israel going forward and not just doing pinpricks or saying this is a small operation, that this is to finish the job, to take out the the threat of the nuclear regime that is an existential threat to not just Israel, but the world. This is going to continue, and the losses are very severe tonight for the Iranians. One more thing I would just add, talking to a number of folks leading up to this tonight, this strike was not just taken in Israel's defense, but to prevent a nuclear war. U.S. intelligence over the last couple of days, including Ambassador Witkoff to NATO, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth in front of the Senate this week testifying, saying that if Iran were to get a nuclear weapon, they are pretty confident they would use it. So these strikes were taken by the Israelis to prevent a nuclear war and a nuclear strike, not to start a war.
Yeah, and I want to kind of double down on that with Alibeth Stuckey in a moment, but and Cameron Hamilton, I want to bring him up as well to give us some kind of an idea about the breadth and the effectiveness of this attack. But Alibeth, you heard Katie there. Do you agree with what she's saying? Do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, what she said about Secretary Rubio's statement and how she interpreted it as more of an indication.
Targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before. Steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before. Steps
not language that is new, but clearly a ramping up of language. As of course, at this point in time, there was diplomacy that was going on as well. These talks possibly still going on. One of the things that we've seen in the past with the Iranians, I've been on the ground when big strikes took place. Like for instance, when the head of the IRGC was killed, Quds Force was killed in 2020, and the Iranians do take their time, they do calibrate their response. So that's certainly something that we're looking for now again.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is waiting now to see when the retaliation comes and in what form. But Fred, everyone is also watching and reading the statement from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, that first and foremost distances the United States from this attack. Secondly, it notably omits an explicit statement of support for Israel's defense. Perhaps that is implied, but if you're in Iran right now, how are they reading that statement, and how do you think it might be factoring it in to their plans for retaliation?
I think that that's something that's actually key. It was very interesting, that statement from Marco Rubio, first of all, omitting any sort of support for Israel by the United States, and then also saying that the U.S. had no part in this either. Because one of the things that the Iranians, of course, have said in the past days is that U.S. facilities in the Middle East would be at risk as well. And that's something that we've been hearing from Iranian officials, is that if the U.S. were involved in these sort of strike together with the Israelis and would help the Israelis, that then the Iranians would go after U.S. facilities in the Middle East. One of the big lines that we've been hearing from the Iranians over the past couple of years is they said, look, next to almost every U.S. facility in the Middle East, the Iranians have some sort of militia that's allied with them, and so therefore things could get very dangerous for the United States. How this changes the equation is really unclear, and it's also, of course, very interesting because right now you do still have that diplomatic process that's been going on. The U.S.'s envoy Steve Witkoff set to still go to the Middle East in a couple of days and meet with Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi to try and talk about Iran's nuclear program. So whether or not that process continues is unclear. But it certainly changes things, or could change things for the Iranians, that the U.S. is distancing itself from these attacks, and could possibly also change the Iranian retaliation. Right now, of course, they're most probably trying to come to terms with what is going on at this point in time. But you do feel when you're on the ground, and we spoke to some senior diplomats from the Iranians a couple of days ago when we were in Tehran,
that the equation between the Trump administration and the Iranians has somewhat changed. There is still a lot of distrust there, but the diplomatic process is being given a chance, or was being given a chance by the Iranians. They were still continuing these talks, even though one thing that we always have to point out is that, of course, there are also different factions in Iran as well, where you do have hardliners who have been very tough on this process, who said not to trust the United States, who says that Iran still definitely needs enrichment and needs enrichment to high levels as well. So that process right now, of course, could be completely different also, as the Iranians themselves also have varying positions inside the country. The supreme leader, of course, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been one who's been very skeptical of the diplomatic process and says he doesn't believe that it could come to a success there.
Fred, stand by for us. Thank you for that great reporting. I want to bring in now CNN military analyst, retired Colonel Cedric Leighton. Colonel Leighton, the stated objective of this operation, according to Prime Minister Netanyahu, is to essentially eliminate the nuclear threat from Iran. Do you have a sense of how long that would take and what that would need to entail if they were to be successful?
Yeah, that's a great question, Abby. I think the key element about the nuclear part is that one of the things that the Iranians have done is they have built some really hardened facilities all around the country. Like in Natanz and Fordo, those two sites that are particularly known for their nuclear research facilities. And what is key about this is that the type of concrete that they use is actually a very specialized hardened concrete. Now, the Israelis will tell you that they actually have a way of penetrating those particular sites, but it's questionable whether or not they can do that with the types of bombs that they have. So the Israelis would have to mount waves and waves of attacks. Those attacks would have to come in basically in a series of sorties. When what we probably saw this evening was the first two sorties of those attacks going through. The Israelis believe that they have actually achieved a lot of what they set out to do with this, certainly in terms of the decapitation part of this. But for the nuclear part of that, I think it remains to be seen. I think it would take a while for them to be certain that they have actually destroyed Iran's nuclear capability, especially all those centrifuges that you often see when we talk about the Iranian nuclear program.
In the studio now with our analysts and reporters, Jim Sciutto, hearing what Colonel Leighton said there, I mean, what's your sense of where this war, if it does in fact become all-out war between Israel and Iran, where it stands in the historical context? A lot of people are saying it is a big moment for the region.
Absolutely, no question, it is. And it's interesting. I heard from lawmakers in the last couple of weeks that there was concern that Israel wouldn't go just after the nuclear sites, they might go big, and that would very much lead to a war. And that's what, it's already a war between Israel and Iran. And the only question is, how does Iran respond to this? The next question is, does the US get drawn in some way? If Iran responds in such a way that Israeli defenses by themselves cannot take out all the missiles and drones, and that's quite conceivable, the US would help defend Israel, its ally. How far does it go? What sort of resources would you need to do that over time? And then by doing so, that involves the US more directly, in which case it might open the US up to retaliatory strikes from Iran as well, US forces in the region, etc. There's a third category of attacks that there is concern about in this country, and there has been for some time, that Israel has enormous international terrorism capabilities. They have cells around the world, including in this country. They've attempted to carry out blocks in this country. Iran does, sorry. They've attempted to carry out attacks in this country, assassinations before. That, of course, would be an escalation, a significant one. But it is a capability that the U.S. would be concerned Iran might resort to if you get to that point. I mean, the difficulty about escalation ladders, and Alex knows better than me about this, is that it's hard to control them as you move up. And one person's proportional could be another person's escalatory, which then triggers a larger response. And this is where right now it's between Israel and Iran. If the U.S. were to get involved, it's hard to control.
What about, Alex, the other partners in the region of the United States that were a part of defending, they wouldn't put it that way, that they were defending Israel, but they played a role in Israel being able to withstand that massive drone attack from Iran. I haven't really seen any reaction from those states.
Yep.
What does that say to you?
I think we largely won't. I mean, if we look since October 7th, right, you've seen statements of anger. You haven't seen any of the countries in the region withdraw their ambassadors or end diplomatic relations with Israel since the Abraham Accords took place. And for transparency, it was Ambassador Shapiro's deputy for the N7 program, the Atlantic Council, was part of the normalization efforts. And you haven't seen it take place. You haven't seen it because behind closed doors, there were some high fives from some of the regional intelligence services. Hamas is widely hated everywhere you go. They don't want to see the violence that's happening in Gaza, but there's no love lost from Hamas, and there is no Arab state that wants to see Iran get a weapon because it's going to trigger a regional arms race, and the U.S. doesn't want that either. So there is a desire to contain this Nazi regional conflict. So you're going to see just muted silence from a lot of folks that are in there. That's what I think.
I know that regional coalition that was built for those last attacks is actively being rebuilt right now. That they are reaching out once again to all of those regional allies, both the ones that they have overt relationships with, and those they have covert relationships. I mean, we know that it's been widely reported that Saudi Arabia has provided some kind of assistance with radar defenses, intelligence in the region as well, even though Israel and Saudi Arabia do not officially have relations. But I can tell you that speaking to people in Israel tonight, I mean, the mood is very different than it was with those last two rounds of strikes between Israel and Iran. I mean, Israel is calling up tens of thousands of reservists right now, so that suggests they're preparing for a range of scenarios. And beyond that, we know that Israel got lucky last time Iran fired ballistic missiles. They fired about 200 ballistic missiles at Israel. Several of them struck. No casualties from those direct missile strikes. One man in the West Bank was struck by falling shrapnel. Israel is unlikely to get as lucky this time, especially if that range is much bigger, and Israelis are bracing for that possibility.
Everyone stand by for us as we watch the skies over Israel as dawn emerges there. More breaking news tonight. A federal judge has ruled that Donald Trump's control of the National Guard in California is illegal. Stay with us.
I'm joined this evening by our Chief Operating Officer of the city, Lashandra Burks, our Chief of Investigations, Prinzina Span, our Head of Homicide Investigations, Lieutenant Smith, as well as the Zone Commander here in Zone 4, Major Clay. This evening, the Atlanta Police Department, about 8 minutes after 7, was called to the apartment complex. We responded to a report of shots fired and a person possibly shot. When we arrived on scene, we were made aware that there was a 12-year-old that had been struck by the gunfire. Despite the efforts of Grady EMS and Grady Hospital, that child has passed. What we currently know is that there were two groups here at the apartment complex and that a conflict occurred between those two groups. One group returned to a blue car, and once they entered that car and started to drive down the street, they opened fire on the group they had been in an argument with just moments before. And in that exchange of gunfire, the 12-year-old was shot. This neighborhood lost a child, and the city lost a child. And this is what the impact of gun violence is. As I speak to you now, this police department is actively pursuing all leads that have been given to us and looking for the individuals in the blue car and the others that were here in the apartment complex. And I ask your viewers, your listeners, and the readers of your media outlets, if you have any information that would assist this police department, because this is a city effort to identify the individuals that opened fire in this neighborhood, to please reach out to Crime Stoppers with the information you may have and that any video that you have. While we have been blessed for the last 2 years to see a reduction in gun violence in our city, and our homicide rate continues to drop, gun violence is still real, and individuals that take guns to settle disputes impact us all as a society, all of us as Atlantans, and right here at this neighborhood. And this police department is going to arrest those that were involved tonight, and we are going to place them in a courtroom of this county. I have very limited information I can give you because this is an active investigation that's playing out across our city right now. But there is a couple of questions that I may be able to answer. I will certainly try to do so.
Chief, you heard there was a second shooting here also. Was that connected to the first one, to the 12-year-old boy you got?
Yeah, we believe those injuries was an individual that actually tripped trying to get away from a gunfire. He did not seek any medical attention beyond here. So we have the one individual that was shot, unfortunately.
So that other person was not shot?
That is correct. That's correct.
Chief, you were out here just a couple weeks ago. 28-year-old shot in the head, same complex. Now you have a 12-year-old shot and killed in the same complex. You talked to neighbors. They said something has got to change out here. This will have security. Did not see security out here with this complex. What do you tell these neighbors who said, it shouldn't take a 12-year-old child shot to get the attention out here that Ken Parks has a big issue.
I know this department aggressively pursues gun violence in the city. We have been since day one. The city brings a holistic approach to bringing down gun violence all across Atlanta, and we'll make sure all of those measures are being carried out here. And there should be no doubt that the Atlanta Police Department will be present. All the efforts of city government will be present here to address any factors that may be breeding gun crime. But I will tell individuals that choose to bring a gun into a conflict, you have a responsibility not to do that, and it's against the law, and we're going to arrest you for that. And so we will do everything in our power to bring that person to justice. And any individual that has the ability to put pressure and bring influence on individuals that will use guns to end a conflict, we need their help as well.
Chief, just to be clear, the boy who was shot, was he a bystander or was he part of the crowd?
He was an innocent bystander, sir.
So he was not part of the groups that got
He was caught in the crossfire. Good evening, everyone. Darren Sherbaum, Chief of Police of the Atlanta Police Department. I'm joined this evening by our Chief Operating Officer of the city, LaShondra Burks, our Chief of Investigations, Prinzina Span, our Head of Homicide Investigations, Lieutenant Smith, as well as the Zone Commander here in Zone 4, Major Clay. This evening, the Atlanta Police Department, about 8 minutes after 7, was called to the apartment complex. We responded to a report of shots fired and a person possibly shot. When we arrived on scene, we were made aware that there was a 12-year-old that had been struck by the gunfire. Despite the efforts of Grady EMS and Grady Hospital, that child has passed. What we currently know is that there were two groups here at the apartment complex and that a conflict occurred between those two groups. One group returned to a blue car, and once they entered that car and started to drive down the street, they opened fire on the group they had been in an argument with just moments before. And in that exchange of gunfire, the 12-year-old was shot. This neighborhood lost a child, and the city lost a child. And this is what the impact of gun violence is. As I speak to you now, this police department is actively pursuing all leads that have been given to us and looking for the individuals in the blue car and the others that were here in the apartment complex. And I ask your viewers, your listeners, and the readers of your media outlets, if you have any information that would assist this police department, because this is a city effort to identify the individuals that opened fire in this neighborhood, to please reach out to Crime Stoppers with the information you may have and that any video that you have. While we have been blessed for the last 2 years to see a reduction in gun violence in our city, and our homicide rate continues to drop, gun violence is still real, and individuals that take guns to settle disputes impact us all as a society, all of us as Atlantans, and right here at this neighborhood. And this police department is going to arrest those that were involved tonight, and we are going to place them in a courtroom of this county. I have very limited information I can give you because this is an active investigation that's playing out across our city right now. But there is a couple of questions that I may be able to answer. I will certainly try to do so.
Chief, we heard there was a
There you go, a little gun violence going on. Atlanta, summertime, across the country, it's just crazy. Everybody's quiet. We might have to get into some of that. Let's see. I've been wanting to get into it, but it's like, what in the heck is going on? Let's get some. Indianapolis, Indiana, great city, great playoff game last night. No, wrong one. Hold on. Indianapolis, Indiana, great city, NBA playoffs last night. What's going on? Hold on. Let's start this over. Hold on. Here we go.
New developments in the tragic death of an Evansville 3-year-old. The coroner has now identified the boy as Javen Vontae Keon Ray Carter.
Police arrested the boy's dad after they say he took off from the scene. So let's get over to Jordan Yaney for more details. Jordan?
Yeah, Rob, Jamie, 30-year-old Javante Carter is now in jail, charged with neglect of a dependent causing death. Now, Evansville police say it was his gun that the boy found under the couch cushion, leading to his death.
I need help. I need help.
Emotional cries for help just moments after a gun went off on Florence Street inside a home at Fulton Square Apartments.
Oh my God, it's the baby.
Evansville police say 3-year-old Javen Vontae Keon Ray Carter found a gun under a couch cushion and pulled the trigger before anyone could stop him.
It's incredibly tragic anytime anyone is shot, but a small child like this, 3 years old, it's heartbreaking.
After a gunshot rang out, multiple calls were made to 911, one of them describing the boy's father.
He's taking off down the street right now.
Police say 30-year-old Javante Carter ran off with the gun, eventually hiding it in a neighbor's backyard.
We utilized both a canine and a drone to ultimately find Javante Carter and take him into custody for this incident.
Javante was no stranger to Evansville police. Court records show a history of arrests, including a conviction in a deadly 2017 crash. Officers say they found him within an hour and the gun a short time later. In that time, his son Javen Vontae was taken to the hospital where he died. Now, the tragic incident serving as a reminder of gun safety.
Secure those firearms. Everybody knows you can't leave them accessible to anyone. And responsible firearms ownership is to keep it in a safe, locked up.
Well, in addition to his neglect charge, Javante Carter is charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon and possession of marijuana. He's being held without bond and is set to appear in court on Wednesday, guys.
Gun violence this summer is really everything going on in the world. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just so many, like, what is going on? Let's find another one.
A tragic accidental shooting in South Phoenix. A tragic accidental shooting in South Phoenix. Police say a 9-year-old boy accidentally shot and killed his 5-year-old sister.
And tonight, their father is behind bars. Fox 10's Lindsay Regas is live tonight with more on how this all happened. Lindsay.
Yeah, Layla Ramos's family describes her as a sweet little girl who was taken too soon. They weren't ready to go on camera today, but tell me how much she meant to them.
Happy birthday to you.
A young girl with a bright smile. Nothing could stop Layla Ramos from having a great 5th birthday, not even a candle with the wrong number. She was looking forward to starting school, but her life was taken away Tuesday night while she was visiting her dad at his house near 7th Avenue and MLK Jr. Boulevard. Police say her 9-year-old brother got his hands on their dad's rifle and accidentally shot Layla. The kids' father,
it's amazing how in America, how many shootings end up happening on MLK Boulevard, Frederick Douglass Drive, Malcolm X Boulevard, Harriet Tubman. It's
33-year-old Irvin Ramos Jimenez drove her to the nearest hospital. Then she was rushed to a trauma center, but she did not survive. Phoenix police arrested Ramos Jimenez. Officers say he was not legally allowed to own a gun.
This isn't a simple case of a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. The defendant is a prohibited possessor, but he brought a gun into a home with kids, and not just any gun, it was an assault rifle. He stored it in his 9-year-old's bedroom, and if this gun had not been in the house, we wouldn't have had the outcome that we did, where an innocent 4-year-old girl was shot and killed.
In his initial appearance, the judge released Ramos Jimenez on his own recognizance and said he can't have any contact with witnesses. Layla's mom sharing her little girl had a gentle soul, kind, soft-hearted, and always so loving. She made everyone feel special with just a smile or a hug. Layla's aunt Jennifer says her niece's signature pose was the peace sign, fitting because she was so peaceful, bright, happy, and funny. And that's how she wants Layla to be remembered. Layla's uncle set up a GoFundMe to pay for funeral expenses. We have that link on our website, fox10phoenix.com. Reporting live, Lindsay Regis, Fox 10 News.
Another young person gunned down in America. So that one was Evansville, Indiana, and the other one was Arizona. I don't know, accidental shooting. People have, I don't know, they better go get that, I don't know, go get that Bible. That's the best weapon in the world right there. I don't know what everybody I don't know what everybody doing with these guns, but whatever we got going on in this country with them guns, it's time to put them away. It's time to, that it's old, it's tired, it's played out. Your teenagers, your little kids getting gunned down. That shit is so played out. And we need to break that narrative in America. Because those little kids didn't deserve to die. Those teenagers didn't deserve to die. And all these murders, suicides y'all got that going on. What is wrong with you people? I'm telling you. Craziness. I mean, it's just so tired. It's tired. If you look, and we about to look because I'm tired of it. I'm tired. We're going to see. Let's see. Look at it. That's the last couple of weeks. That's a month. Today's the what? 12th. And mostly. Let's look. Most of the people on there are black men. Look. Let's look. Black females, black men. Black man. 1, 2, we got Arkansas, Missouri, the YouTuber and his girlfriend at Bellagio, one of my favorite places is at the Bellagio. At the Bellagio, let's take a look at that.
video looking at here now shows one rocket has nuclear facility and down. Veteran security source tells us the top Iranian military leader are surrounding safety is ahead of the Revolutionary Guard in the field. The question now is how and when Iran will respond. The sources tell us they are
A YouTuber in Vegas. He's from Arizona. Him and his girlfriend got shot in front of Bellagio fountain. One of the best places to go in Vegas, have some fun. And it was over an internet beef or something. Like, what's wrong with people? It's crazy. Yeah. That's not what I'm looking for.
That happened just here on the Las Vegas Strip. 41-year-old Manuel Ruiz turned himself into Henderson police this morning. Police say they knew who they...
Hold on. We got started a little late. This is the YouTuber and his girlfriend in front of the Bellagio in Vegas, where we all go when we go to Vegas and hang out and enjoy that we're in Vegas, and we never think of somebody getting gunned down in front of us or getting gunned down, because we all trust each other and we all are in Vegas to have fun, but not this day.
News Now reporter Kamari Esquerra is live on the Strip with what we've learned so far. Kamari.
Ozzy, a suspect is now in custody in connection to that double homicide that happened just here on the Las Vegas Strip. 41-year-old Manuel Ruiz turned himself into Henderson police this morning. Police say they knew who they were looking for. They have not identified the victims, but the shooting was on a live YouTube stream from a man calling himself Finney the Legend. Police say Ruiz and the victims had a personal dispute. Investigators say the conflict unfolded over several social media platforms. Officers were on routine patrol when they heard gunshots and rushed toward the area where they found two people with gunshot wounds on the sidewalk. Both victims were pronounced dead at the scene. Now Ruiz does face 2 counts of open murder with a deadly weapon. Reporting on the Las Vegas Strip, Kamari Esquerra, 8 News Now.
Your mission, sell 200 brand new JT's Kias no matter what.
YouTuber gunned down in Vegas. Like, what's wrong with people? What's wrong with people? What's wrong with this world? And Netanyahu, he's gonna go in Tehran, Iran, Persia, one of the most historical lands ever in our existence. And he assassinated a lot of their people, nuclear scientists, military leaders, and Iran's supposed to just take it. And we got gun violence in our country, little kids finding guns, shooting other little kids, teenagers gunned down, murder, suicides. It's all tired. We need to get back to God. We need to get back to God in this country and the world. Respect life. What we need is a president that cares about more than money. That's what we need. I don't care The world is about more than money. God's watching it all. I put money on that. Iran. It's spelled Iran, but like when I was blogging about the protests 2 years ago, everybody was on TikTok. Iran, you said Iran. It's all tired. We're America. The president, the Secretary of State are supposed to be like superheroes. They're supposed to be able, they're supposed to be respected all over the world. Africa, South America, Caribbean, Asia, Europe. We don't have that anymore in America. And obviously it's an issue if you look around. When I think of presidents and Secretary of States, I think of always Abraham Lincoln and William Seward. Abraham Lincoln, the Illinois lawyer from Springfield, Illinois, and William Seward, former New York governor, U.S. Senator of New York. They both wanted to be president. Seward had the resume, though. Seward had the resume. He had the college. He had the titles. 1848, Seward and Lincoln met in Massachusetts. Lincoln was a one-term congressman, and Seward, I can't remember if he was governor or U.S. Senator of New York. He got a statue in New York. If you go to Manhattan, on one of those, I think 33rd, 32nd, all those streets of New York. I haven't passed it in a while. Was in New York last Thursday. New York. So they met in Massachusetts 12 years before Lincoln was elected president. They were campaigning for Zachary Taylor, President Zachary Taylor. They shared a room together. And then in 1860, they were competing for the Republican nomination for president. Seward knew he had it in the bag. Lincoln came to New York, Cooper Union, gave a speech, blew up, went to Exeter, New Hampshire, where his son was at school, at the prep school in Exeter Academy. He was prepping for his Harvard in the news lately. And this is 1860, February. He was prepping for his Harvard entry exams. By the time Lincoln left Cooper Union in Brooklyn, William Seward's home turf, he ends up in New Hampshire, gives 7 speeches in 2 days, 2 hours apiece, blows up, goes to the convention, goes to the convention in May in Chicago. Nobody ever thought Lincoln was going to be a candidate. So they ended up having it in Chicago, Illinois. The wigwam, Lincoln's backyard. And so they came in, and William Seward had this big party at his house in maybe Albany, New York. I think it's Auburn, New York. And first ballot, Seward was up big. Second ballot, the lead shrank. Third ballot, Lincoln stole the nomination from him. And Seward knew it was a wrap. Lincoln made Seward his Secretary of State. Team of rivals, Doris Kearns Goodwin. One of the great stories. Seward handled everything. They were like Batman and Robin or something. Superman and Batman. Lincoln got assassinated that night. And they tried to assassinate William Seward the same night his family. William Seward was in bed because he had a a horse and carriage accident. So he was in bed. The same attackers who gunned down Lincoln came in Seward's house. His son, his daughters fought him off. Weeks later, they never told Seward that Lincoln was assassinated because he was in such shock from the horse and carriage accident and his own assassination attempt. But on Easter Sunday, as Doris Kearns Goodwin writes in Team of Rivals, one of the great books, Seward looked out. He lived in D.C. He looked out at Lafayette Park, and he seen the flag at half-staff. And he looked again, and something clicked in his head. And he looked at his aide and the reporter that was sitting by his bed. He said, the president is dead. The aide said, no, he isn't. No, he isn't. And Seward knew for sure the president was gone because Seward said, if the president's alive, why hasn't he come to see me? If the president was alive and he knew I was attacked, he would have been the first one by my bed. And at that moment, Seward knew that his commander-in-chief and his partner in crime had been assassinated at Ford's Theater. Gunned down. That night, Lincoln had told his bodyguard to stay home. His bodyguard never forgave himself. I think he might have even committed suicide out of regret. That's when they created the Secret Service to accompany the president. That's 1865 April. And the world is used to a competent president, a competent Secretary of State. They trust it. They trust America. But in these last couple of years, people are losing faith in America, trust in America. And you can see the destruction around the world. We're no longer tight with Europe. We're no longer tight with Canada. We haven't had a president visit Africa since Obama went to Mandela's funeral in 2013. China and Russia runs Africa. Even though the reports say 25% of the world's 25% of the world's workforce by 2030 will come from Africa. We haven't had a president. We had one Biden visit Gambia in December, right before he left office. South America, China runs that. Caribbean, 70-year embargo on Havana. China's building there. We never talk about it. They building here. Did you see the story? New Hampshire, where China bought this land for $65 million. Let's find it. So when I think of a president, I don't care. I think of President Lincoln and Secretary of State William Seward. Team of rivals. Let's find that New Hampshire story. I found it.
farmland and sites near American farmland and you've heard about the Chinese buying American farmland and sites near American military bases. Now a Chinese businessman is trying to buy part of America's water supply and overpaying by multiples. It's true, and it's happening in Nashua, New Hampshire. This is just another in line of many bad acts by the Chinese government, threatening to invade Taiwan, the COVID cover-up, aggressively spying, a massive military buildup paid for by American taxpayers, sending a spy balloon over the U.S. mainland, stealing American military technology. News Nation's senior national correspondent Brian Entin is investigating in New Hampshire.
Nashua, New Hampshire, once a hub for textile manufacturing, now a possible hub for the Chinese.
And you have the airport here, you have our water supply that they're looking to capture.
Communist China owning a building like this.
The latest Chinese concern is what's going here. China's largest beverage company, called Nung Fu, bought this industrial site next to the Penachuk water system where the area's drinking water comes from. Nung Fu would use the local water for their beverage plant.
Being tied into our Penachuk water system and taking millions of gallons a day of drinking water from the citizens of Nashua is very concerning.
What locals find most suspicious is what Nung Fu paid for the site, $67 million, more than 4 times the assessed value of just $15 million.
Were there any public meetings or was there any sort of outreach? Did anyone know what was happening?
No, not at all. This seems to be kind of like the color of this building. This is done very stealthy.
So this is the massive site that Nung Fu bought. The building is pretty much abandoned. We can't fly the drone because it's so close to the airport, but I'm going to drive around the building to show you just how big it is.
It's 337,000 square feet, sitting on 23 acres of land. And it's very close to the Nashua Airport, several defense contractors, and an FAA control center.
I had no idea, so I did some research both in English and Mandarin Chinese, which is my first language, and I was just shocked.
Lily Tang Williams fled Chinese communism and is now running for Congress in New Hampshire.
If you were in China speaking out like this, you would...
I disappear.
You would disappear?
Of course. I'm afraid if I go back, they let me go in, and they don't let me come out. I disappear, but they want me to shut up.
Williams says they want her to shut up about the Chinese soft power invasion and the national security concerns of projects like Nung Fu.
What is China trying to do when they buy up all of this land around America?
So I have been trying to warn people. Xi Jinping has a China dream. And his China dream is to use soft power invasion of the United States.
Soft power invasion.
Soft power invasion, business and education, apps like TikTok, WeChat, and media, entertainment, everything they can without fire one shot to expand into Western countries like the United States.
The expansion in Nashua, New Hampshire goes beyond just Nung Fu.
Something else strange, just a couple of miles from where we were, where the Chinese company purchased that building, is this abandoned college, Daniel Webster College. It's a 50-acre site, and it was also purchased by a Chinese investor about 7 years ago for $14 million. Much of the campus remains totally abandoned.
The mayor of Nashua tells me that Chinese investor bought the college campus for double what it was worth. And now Nung Fu has come to town, paying 4 times the appraised value. He isn't against the project, but admits it's strange.
If the land was valued at like $15 million and they paid $67 million, I guess I'm still trying.
It's very weird. Why they would do that, I have no idea.
I mean, have you heard anything?
No. It's very puzzling as to why that would happen.
And so, Leland, the mayor says he doesn't have any national security concerns. He says the city will not sell the actual water company, but everyone here is wondering why that Chinese company would pay 4 times the assessed value, why the area near the watershed, and then also the college campus. Leland?
Great reporting, Brian. It's worth pointing out in so many of these cases, the Chinese go to great lengths to disguise exactly who's buying it and why. So when people don't want you to know what they're doing, we send Brian Entin out there. Great work, my friend.